Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, I'm finding this debate sort of slightly hard to believe. I mean, Mr. Speaker, I'm not surprised with the move of the bill and the fact that he failed to read the SOP in the Select Committee and has a bill doing exactly the opposite of what he claims it to do. I mean, I've worked closely with Mr. Quinn, and no level of incompetence on his part would surprise me, Mr. Speaker. But what I don't understand is why Simon Bridges, who everyone knows is a lawyer of some repute. He is. No, he is. He was Crown Prosecutor in Tauranga, and he used to have potential. But, Mr. Speaker, how can that member sit there with his gob shut and let this go on? Why does Simon Bridges not get up onto his hind legs and show a bit of integrity and tell Paul Quinn that this bill is not on? It wouldn't be. Well, no. There's a number of reasons for that, and I challenge that member to get up in this House and to say, and in fact, I'd let him take part of my call if he was prepared to stand up and say that he supports the dog's breakfast that is this bill. Because not only was it wrong to do what Paul Quinn tried to do, but he couldn't even do what he tried to do. Well, Mr. Speaker, we've had a discussion recently about All Blacks and nearly All Blacks, and a team's just been named. And I do agree with the New Zealand Rugby Union councillor who said of Paul Quinn, if he'd been 2 inches taller, he would have been an All Black. He was just missing the top 2 inches. And that's why and we're seeing the evidence. We are seeing the evidence of that member missing the top 2 inches in this legislation as well. Because not only did he bring in a bill that was against the Bill of Rights, against our international conventions, something designed to embarrass New Zealand around the world with its lack of integrity and its stupidity, but at a Select Committee, what he did was that he got an SOP, he moved an SOP at a Select Committee that went from not allowing people to vote to allowing the worst criminals to vote. So he's the joker who says it doesn't matter how many prison officers you kill, you can have a vote. That's what Paul Quinn's legislation does. He's tipped it totally on its head. He's made it absolutely the opposite of what he claimed, and he's come to the House proud of his work. It's a good day's work for Paul Quinn to get something absolutely wrong. I want to focus on another member, and that's Jonathan Young. Look, I'm one of the people who was privileged to be in the House with Jonathan Young's father, and he was a man of enormous integrity. He valued Parliament as an institution, and he what might be described as an old liberal. Now, he did what was right and what was fair. He worked through things case by case, and he was a good debater, but he respected this institution. I've seen him get up and give a 60-minute speech on a first reading, He would never get up and give the sort of rubbishy 1-minute speech that his son, I can tell, is embarrassed to give. I can tell that the member wasn't in the House with Ben Young. 1984? 84, 87. He retired in 87, I think. Sorry?
Ben was here then, and I remember...
I actually think Ben...
Yes, he was.
Sorry, is the member right? 1990. I apologise, he was here till 1990. He made a hell of an impression. Sorry?
Yeah, right.
I apologise. But that... Paul Quinn said get it right! Oh, what a day! Paul Quinn, who's never got anything right in this House. never got anything right, introduced a bill, tried to fix the bill up and made it worse, Paul Quinn, I've explained, I might as well explain to the House, and I've explained to a number of my colleagues, I now invite Paul Quinn to every meeting I can in Hutt South. Every single meeting that is on in Hutt South, I say, can you get an invitation to Paul Quinn? It's really important that we get the National Party represented there and people can see the sort of talent that they have. Mr Speaker, I do it regularly, and Mr Speaker, I think it's fair to say people are I'm becoming a bit transparent now. People are saying to me, don't suggest to anyone else that Paul Quinn's invited to the meetings because, well, no, it's not the National Party works, but it is the National Party Hutt South Executive. What little exists of it. Because, Mr Speaker, this is something that is actually absolutely typical of him. And I am going to go back to Simon Bridges and say to him, does he support this bill in its current form? He does support the bill. So he is supporting the bill in the current form that would give Bill the vote, that would give the cop killers the vote, that would give the vote to those people who kill prison officers. Mr Bridges, do you support the bill in its current form?
With the SOP.
Oh, with the SOP that it's... Here he goes. He's a bit like the man who chases around after the night cart. He's a bit like the man who chases around after Paul Quinn, tidying up for what comes out of the horse's arse. Because, Mr Speaker, I have seen legislation put together. I have never seen legislation put together in a way that more resembles what comes out of the back end of a horse than the legislation that this member, Paul Quinn, has brought to the House today. But sir, is it something that surprises us? Is anyone in the House shocked? Is anyone here surprised? Not a whisper, not a whimper from the opposition, from the government, the other side. None of them say that they're surprised that Paul Quinn has made a cock-up of this size. There is not a member of the government on the government benches who thinks that Paul Quinn is capable of putting together a decent bit of legislation that at least says what he means. You know, what he means is bad enough, but what he does is even worse. And, Mr Speaker, you know the sad thing? He's actually one of their better members. I mean, Sandra Gowdy chaired the committee. Paul Quinn makes it look good. Paul Quinn, and what I say is another area of constitutional outrage. The fact that they could not get decent advisers at the Select Committee. They would not have the justice. They wouldn't get the justice people. Only 2 more minutes. Oh, Mr Speaker. Paul Quinn drove the Select Committee not to hear from people who knew about it. Paul Quinn stopped the justice people who knew about this legislation from giving advice. Why? Because he's embarrassed. He's a sad man. And he's very, very embarrassed by this. Doesn't care about the Bill of Rights. Doesn't care about justice issues. He's someone who... there's sort of debate going on about within the National Party list. I know that they've got a couple of good new Maori candidates, and they're trying to get one of them down to work in Wellington area, and Paul Quinn's resisting that like nothing on earth. And I'm not surprised that he's resisting that. And Tau Hanare might well laugh. And he might be involved in trying to get that decent candidate onto the list for the National Party in Wellington. But I want to say, I do welcome my opponent. You know, it is great to have Paul Quinn running against me. Every now and again I get scared that there might be a competent Tory decides to run in Hutt South. But I say this bit of legislation alone will be enough for me to run every single meeting at the next campaign. The guy who tried to do something that was stupid and ended up with something that was worse. Tried to do something that was stupid. No one thought, no one had any idea at all